All right, so in today's video, we are going to be talking about something that's a little bit on the sort of controversial side, at least in the D&D world, and of course that is the incorporation of homebrew into your games, and more specifically, kind of about how and when you're going to incorporate that for the first time if it's something you've never really done before as a dungeon master. So at least in the D&D community, there tends to be like two sort of sides to this debate. There's one that is firmly in the camp of homebrew all day, all the time, everything that is the best way to do it. And there's a lot of people that fall on the other side, which is the only people that know how to write anything for Dungeons & Dragons are Wizards of the Coast, and no one else can even compare, so don't even try. I do think it's a little bit disingenuous to say that there are only two sides to this debate and that there's no gray area in the middle, because I know for myself, if I had to pick, I definitely fall somewhere in the middle, but I certainly fall a little bit more onto the side of using less homebrew than more. I am a very big fan of a lot of what Wizards has to write. I think they're far more and significantly more talented at creating these worlds and classes and environments, far more so than I could ever hope to be, really. So I do tend to lean more in that direction, but that's not to say that I don't incorporate any homebrew. I will constantly be making rule adjustments in my game. I am a very big fan of the rule of cool, as a lot of my players can certainly attest. I'm actually running a game right now for Waterdeep Dungeon of the Mad Mage where my barbarian player is actually using a homebrew custom class, and we're sort of building together because he was a really big fan of the Elite Barbarian from Diablo 3, and we're sort of trying to find a way of incorporating that into our game, and it's been a ton of fun trying to play around with that. So I definitely do enjoy incorporating elements of homebrew, but I don't think it's the sort of be-all, end-all of the entire game. So I think the kind of tricky thing is that when you are starting to incorporate homebrew into your game, it can be difficult because you're really trying to strike a balance between what's fun and also what's sort of logical and what actually kind of makes sense. I think what's really important to remember that a lot of DMs, especially new ones, can kind of forget, because you're starting to play this game and there's so much opportunity for possibility and expansion and creation. You can sort of get blinded by just how much there is, that you just kind of want to start doing your own thing, because that's what D&D is about. It's about creating your own worlds. It's about doing your own thing, that you can kind of forget about the fact that there's so much already out there that's already been created for you and set up to have you going for success in your games already, that it doesn't always make sense to start incorporating or creating your own ways of doing it, because it's probably already been done in some other way. I think something that's often forgotten is that a lot of times the rules themselves are not really designed to be restricting or limiting the actions of players, but in a lot of senses, the rules are actually there just to provide context. Because if you're killing an ancient red dragon at 3rd level and you're telling someone either online or a friend who's also played Dungeons & Dragons, that doesn't really mean anything. Like, how did you kill an ancient red dragon at 3rd level? It makes no sense. Maybe they might not know, they might not be aware of some crazy rules that your DM has created, or some kind of wild environment where that was possible. So the rules that exist in the player's handbook and in all the supplementary rule sets for the game, they really create a ton of context to provide the sort of backdrop that allows your game to actually make sense. So what really got me thinking about this recently is that a friend of mine, who's actually been one of my players in my campaigns over the last couple of years, is actually going to be running Tomb of Annihilation for the first time. And he is essentially a first-time DM. He has run a couple of one-shots here and there, maybe small 2 or 3, but for all intents and purposes, he is a first-time dungeon master. And I can already see that he is getting completely sort of blinded by this world of creation and ambition and trying to do all these amazing things. And honestly, like, more power to him. I genuinely respect that. I think it's amazing. I know the kind of person that he is, and he loves sort of getting really, really stuck in to all these nitty-gritty little details and figuring out all these things. So I'm sure he's going to do a great job. But I can definitely see him sort of heading off in certain directions, which can be potentially problematic if you're a first-time dungeon master. You don't really know what you're trying to do. You're trying to do like 15 things, go in all these different directions, but you don't really have like a sort of overarching idea of what you're trying to accomplish. You're just trying to do all these individual cool things. So as an example, one of the things that's happening right now is one of the other players in this campaign in Tomb of Annihilation is actually going to be playing an artificer. Now, our DM has never played an artificer. He has never played in a campaign that has had an artificer. I'm pretty sure he's only read the class description maybe twice when our other player said that he wanted to be one. And this player is really, really interested and really fascinated with the crafting aspect. And admittedly, the crafting system in 5e is honestly pretty lackluster. Rules as written, it's not great. So he's been looking into all these kinds of homebrew modifications and adjustments that, to sort of address this sort of maybe inherent weakness with the artificer, or any sort of the ways where it doesn't quite live up to what this player is trying to do and what they're trying to create with their character. And as awesome as I think that is, and I'm certainly not saying that the crafting system is great, I'm not saying that the artificer is perfect, I'm absolutely not saying that you have to have played a class before you can DM for that class, or you have to have played with that class to be able to DM for them. The first time I DM'd, I had never played any class. My first experience in Dungeons & Dragons was actually as a dungeon master, so I didn't really know anything. But I think that sort of gave me a little bit of an insight into a walk before you can run mentality. And I think that's kind of what my approach to incorporating homebrew into your game is, and I generally think that's where you should start. So when I say you need to have this walk before you can run mentality, again, I'm not saying that you need to completely understand every aspect and dimension of a class to be able to DM for it effectively, or even to be able to create homebrew. That's not what I'm saying. But having a good understanding of what the pitfalls are, or what you perceive as those pitfalls, I think is really, really important. Taking a couple looks online and you're running through some Reddit posts or from things anywhere in DM's Guild or anything like that, you're gonna find all kinds of people that are gonna say, oh, this doesn't work great, that doesn't work great, but what if it does? What if it makes sense in your game? What if it is actually exactly what your player is looking for? So to be able to kind of start, jumping in before you've even tried it, to be making all these adjustments to your game, it just seems a little bit over the top and a little bit unnecessary. It can lead to a lot of extra confusion, especially if you have to walk things back. And to be clear, that's not even necessarily a bad thing. Walking back mistakes is fine. That happens as a dungeon master. You'll accidentally give out some crazy item and you'll have to figure out a way of maybe reining that power in, ideally without just taking it away or something like that. But walking back mistakes is fine, but it doesn't usually feel good for anyone that's involved. As a DM, you kind of feel bad taking away some aspect of power or creativity from your players. And as a player, it just feels bad to just lose this thing that you either worked for, that you thought about a lot, and all of a sudden you just can't do it anymore. So in this situation, my advice to him was, why aren't you just running the artificer as written and then just see how that goes? Maybe it works great, and maybe it completely falls on its face and it's absolutely terrible, but at least you tried, and then you get your own sort of in-depth look and your own insight into what's sort of the good and the bad of the class. And additionally, that can really help when you actually begin to look into homebrew options. Instead of just saying, cool, how do I completely reinvent the artificer class? You can now say, cool, how do I kind of evaluate and adjust and make some modifications to this particular aspect of the class? Instead of having this completely grand overarching scheme, you can now really focus that sort of creativity on one or two or maybe even three particular points that you found maybe were a little bit lackluster, or maybe they didn't work great. When it comes to my games, if I have a player that will come to me and ask me if they can either incorporate this idea that they had, or if they found this item online, or this new ability or an adjustment to their class, usually my response is, yeah, let's do it. With the caveat that if it takes away power or fun from another player in the game, or if it completely trivializes some aspect of it, that we're gonna revisit that. That maybe we're not going to go with that, or we'll adjust it in some way or in some capacity so that it doesn't do those things. I never want my other players to feel completely overshadowed by the fact that this other guy got something that feels just completely overpowered and insane. I want everyone to feel like they're equally contributing as much as possible. And by the same token, that also, in a selfish way, kind of goes for me. If this new ability is completely trivializing some aspect of a game, either whether that's combat or negotiations or puzzles or whatever it is, that's not great. Then it just kind of feels like you're in video game mode as well. And that's not exactly what we're looking for. As I said so many times in other videos, D&D is a really, really collaborative experience, and that's what I love to be able to create in my games. So all that to say, if you're a new Dungeon Master, or maybe you've even been DMing for a long time, but you've never really forayed into the world of homebrew content, I think it's great to be able to begin to incorporate that. But I really think that instead of just taking this sort of blind approach of let's just adjust everything, let's create our entire new continent with new political systems and new trade schemes and all these kinds of things, just dial it back a little bit. Take a very, very focused approach at what you want to do. What are the things that you've encountered in the game before that maybe didn't feel great, something you didn't love? And how can you iterate on that? And then look online, speak with your players, speak with other DMs if you know any other ones, and just figure out kind of where to take it and where to go from there. I think that's a really, really great approach to doing it because it's much less overwhelming as a dungeon master, and it's also a lot less intimidating towards your players. If you start a session, then all of a sudden everything is completely different, or if you're starting a brand new campaign with players who played before and they don't really understand all these aspects of your world that you've created, or some rule modifications or adjustments, or maybe the ranger class is completely different and you didn't tell the ranger, that's going to create a lot of problems. It's really important, I think, to take that sort of dialed back and focused approach and really kind of hone in on the things that you want to fix and you want to adjust. And that's not to say that you can't incorporate things in the moment. That's totally fine too. Like I said, I'm a huge fan of the rule of cool. I love doing that kind of stuff. I think it's great. So really all that to say, yes, I think homebrew is great. I think it's an amazing aspect of the game. It's a great way for players and DMs to be able to sort of collaborate and work together to fill all these creative voids and really, really get at the exact kind of game that they're looking to make and play with their friends. And I think that's so cool and I think that's awesome. But I really think you should not try and get carried away, especially if you're a brand new dungeon master or sort of new to the world of homebrew or making adjustments. And then maybe somewhere down the line you do create your entire new fantasy world with all these political systems and intrigue and whatever else you're looking to do. That's amazing. If you can get to a point where you can truly do that and it's a genuinely immersive experience and it makes logical sense, honestly, hats off to you, because that is a truly, truly incredible feat. All right, guys, so that's it. That is going to be my brief discussion about homebrew and how and when I think you can really incorporate it into your games, especially if you're newer as a dungeon master. Please let me know what you think down below. Leave a comment, leave a like, and remember to subscribe as well to the channel because it does sincerely help. I know that it has been a while since I posted a video, so for those of you that care, I am sorry. It just has been an incredibly busy couple of weeks, but I do hope to be creating a lot more content soon. But otherwise, take care.